Today I'm here with Adam King, who is a longtime teacher and a practitioner of Ashtanga Yoga, and honestly is one of a few people I enjoy following these days on social media because it's still questioning the things we think we know. It's questioning the dogmas, and I really like that.
Thank you.
Welcome,
I enjoy
Adam.
following you as well, Alessandro. And it's nice to see you again after so many years. I think I met you maybe 2010, so a long time ago.
We met in Mysore because I
Yeah.
remember you doing, I guess, all third series.
All the advanced
Yeah.
A and into advanced B. Yeah. So
Are you still
yeah,
doing this stuff?
no. No. Yeah, I mean, now, I go to the gym now. I use much more strength training to balance the flexibility. I think that doing such a practice favoring flexibility more than strength, although there is some strength in the advanced series, it still favors flexibility too much, and it's too intense for on the body in terms of that kind of degree of flexibility. And that started to bear out when I was around 38. Started to get more aches and pains and injuries, to be fair. And so I started thinking about also balancing out the yoga and maybe doing a less advanced yoga practice, because you don't need to do it that advanced to get the same benefit, with some strength training. So currently that's what I do, and I've done that for I'm 40, almost 47 now. So yeah, probably the last 7-8 years, I suppose.
There are a few things that are really very fascinating in a way, but also make me think if they are correct, how they are transmitted or not. And one of them is that, in a way, I understand a practice that is so intense. Because, of course, through challenge is also how you can find, you can learn a lot of things, like challenging yourself. And but the point is that the idea that this series of very challenging series and poses, it's something that should be your companion for the whole life. It's something that a little bit, one side idealistic and the other side maybe not even needed. So I always find it fascinating, the thing that maybe it could be enough to say, okay, you do this thing when you're younger. If you think about other activities or sports or whatever, if you see like gymnasts or let's say rhythmic gymnastics.
I think that's what Patabi Joyce originally meant when the first early Westerners came to him, and Patabi Joyce had finished practicing asana himself when he was a young man. I don't know, Krishnamacharya, I think, also probably eased off. I don't think it was ever meant to be an intense practice of asana for life. I think it was like in India, you find the different stages of life. I assume that they
correct.
They felt similarly about the asana. And of course, we have to remember that asana was never used in any such dynamic form or fashion before the 20th century. Anyway, so the whole thing was a bit of an experiment, really. And I don't think, but as I said, Patabi Joyce expected those early Westerners to carry on to that extremity, even when they left Mysore, even when they went home and then came back again. Maybe he expected, obviously that they were going to try hard again with him. But when they went home, I don't think he expected it necessarily to carry on the same way as they were doing in Mysore. So yeah, I mean, the idea that you can go to an Ashtanga center in your town or something, Ashtanga so and so, Ashtanga Turin or Ashtanga whatever and do it every day for a number of years. I think that was already an anathema. In other words, like not something expected in the first place to practice to that level every day, and let alone for your life.
And how it happened? I mean, it was like
I think because it's exciting, and because I have to put my hand up myself and say that, look, our ego is going to get attached to anything. Anything you get good at, your ego gets attached to it, unless you're some kind of saint. And I got good at the Ashtanga, and that made a difference. It made me attractive as a teacher to employ. It gave me a sense of self-esteem to someone who, often I think we often get into yoga, I think, because we are people who lack a certain worldly self-esteem. And so that was definitely there. And it gave that sense of fulfillment. It was something that I was good at last, when I felt like I lacked that in my own life. So there was many reasons why my ego got attracted to it. But I think when it came to the Advanced B series, particularly, I started to see things like the rolling over the foot extremely, and the stuff to the knee that even my own mind, which was perhaps not most rational at the time, just thought that does not look sensible or good for the long term. And it started to be evident that I'd run 20 paces and I'd feel like my knee kind of giving way or my ankles seizing up, or there started to be kind of physical issues with this over flexibility I was gaining this huge range of motion in the joints, which was not, we need to balance this with stability of the joints. And that became, as I say, unavoidably evident in terms of I had to look at that. And so I did. So, I did the postures. And as you say, in some respects, I think you have to challenge yourself to realize that is not necessary anymore. Perhaps like telling someone who hasn't got money, oh, it's not about the money. Well, it's like telling someone about the postures. Oh, it's not about the postures. It's like, well, sometimes you have to experience the postures and
correct.
do them.
No, correct.
It's not about the postures.
No, you're right. Because also I think that the way to understand that is only like going through it.
Do it yourself.
No one
can tell you.
I feel that, if you just say, but that's not what it's about, and you keep on repeating that, you start sounding like these old people.
Exactly.
Who had fun, but they tell the youngest not to do this and not to do that, but they have all the fun.
Exactly.
So that's not really even the best way. But something that that I feel is that once you are a teacher and you're practiced for a while, even with that level of intensity, why you're supposed that you you have to keep on doing that stuff? Because it's something when I was still going to Miser, because then I stopped going, whatever, but when I was still going to Miser, I was seeing these teachers who were like decades were practicing, were really sometimes not judging, but really look like forcing themselves to be able to still do those poses. We're looking, at the end of the practice, we're looking like destroyed people, totally, you say, come on, give me something to eat,
You're totally right. You're totally right.
They will pass out.
The body stays stronger longer than it stays flexible, let's say. You can strength train much more effectively up until your older years, whereas that kind of flexibility and degree of mobility in the body, let's say it's a young people's game, really, right? So those teachers that came there and they kind of carried on practicing till their 50s, 60s, especially those teachers, but younger people as well, they really did suffer. And I think there's this idea that to be a teacher, you have to still be practicing to a certain level, to be allowed to be at the head of the class, to be in front of the class. You have to be the best in the class. And
but also this, where exactly came out? Because it's a
ridiculous idea. Imagine a football trainer.
Exactly, it's what I was going to say.
The best on the pitch. Of course, they're retired. They coach. They don't still need to be the best player. Right? You have to have I think you have to have been able to do some of it. Right? Not even all of it, but you have to have practiced consistently for a number of years. But then, honestly, even if you've done it for a number of years,
and look. And it's interesting, and as you gave this example, it's also interesting because if you think about it, it's not that Maradona was the best trainer. It's not that Pelé was not even a trainer. All the best players, Messi, I don't know if he's gonna train or not, but all the best players were not like outstanding. All the best players were not outstanding trainers. And when you see like the really like the best trainers. We're usually midfielders, a little bit, not so much in the action, like having the vision maybe of the game, but not really being the more, technical or the more, the one scoring more goals.
Yeah. So and you put your finger on another point there, that those practitioners who reach the level, they assume to be the best teachers, that and it's an easy narrative to follow, that you're the best in practice, so somehow by osmosis you can give that level to the student. But of course you can't, and usually those teachers I mean, I often ask them, "How do you do so and so? How do you do this?" And they just say, "Well, I just do it." They
Yeah,
don't know
exactly.
how. They just don't know how they do it because they can. And so, to which end they're kind of blinded by the level, right? As we can say, they're blinded by their privilege to actually relate to average human beings who do struggle with many, what they would perceive as simpler asanas because they just can't understand the average person's level, right? And relate to those people more realistically and with skill of having had to learn how to do it themselves because they never really had to learn. So
And
yeah, there is definitely that.
and look, I honestly, one of the reasons that I've been working for so many years, like working with yoga teachers, doing all these photos and videos, and now it's something I'm still doing. But I shifted more also like in helping on how to present themselves on social media, how to be like to build let's say their brand identity that is kind of aligned on what they really teach, not just a fake persona, but based more on authenticity and sharing their voice. So I switched it a little bit more to that because I feel in a way, I mean, not responsible because I mean, it's something was in the, of course, it was the way maybe of communicating. But I mean, 10 years ago when I was doing, or even more
All the
recently, but I
photography,
mean,
you
doing
were
all this
responsible, weren't you?
photography,
Really?
it was
Yeah, yeah,
almost like,
true.
putting like
Yeah,
these teachers, like,
yeah,
oh, this is just the epic. The epic, look at that, like the gods of Ashtanga, and the gods of Ashtanga are the ones who have the most striking practice. And I don't know, I know this thing inspired a lot of people because also people, I mean, wrote to me, they wrote to the teachers and whatever. So I know these videos and these photos inspired a lot of people to start practicing. And once they started, they found their own way, so maybe they understood other things and whatever they also understood is much more metaphysical or maybe not, who knows. I mean, it's their journey at that point. So I appreciate the thing, and I don't deny that it happened, that it sparked some curiosity, and so it's part of, in a way, the flame. But I feel like that's not the way. Now almost feel like there should be another way to present. I not only talk about Ashtanga, but let's say more in general yoga. Where even if you're very asana based, so let's say what you're teaching all the time is asana, is showing the perfection of the asana all the time, and like how you can express the asana
yeah,
with your
yeah,
body is the only way to present
yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, I think we have to remember when we're talking about asana not being for presentation or demonstration that the roots of asana they really were, right? I mean, Krishnamacharya put
Yeah.
together those asanas specifically for the sake of them being impressive, spectacular, big shapes, very demonstrative, and this is the roots of modern yoga, I would say, or at least the roots of modern Ashtanga, and therefore the roots of modern Vinyasa and power and everything that Ashtanga fed out into, in terms of being particularly aesthetic based, right? In terms of not ascetic, but aesthetics, as you well know, the beautiful picture, and that's that kind of is at the base of this. Let's call it tradition. This way of doing yoga is inherently performative, or at least it was based on those asanas in the first place. So I think it is hard to widen out of that to a certain degree because they are stunning shapes, they are impressive shapes. They do make a good photo, as you well know, and so the allure of that, let's say, is quite hard to distract ourselves from, or put it another way, that's distracting from as David Williams said, the yoga that you really the real yoga is what you don't see. But of course, you can't show that. And I think increasingly in this visually based culture, and this culture where where we increasingly see ourselves and our value in other people's eyes. Yeah, if that makes sense, that we understand ourselves in terms of the value that we have in society in other people's eyes. The value of us as yoga practitioners doesn't lie in the experience that we have internally, but the value of us as yoga practitioners rests in the eyes of others in how advanced we are seemingly in our practice, because the inner experience is being passed over for the externalized, let's say, objectivization of ourselves in asana.
When I see your Instagram, for example. I really like this way that you're doing, but I also try to do nowadays. Whatever, when there is more presenting topics, opening discussions, like not only like showing like the visual part, because I mean, also we are probably at the stage where we reached a certain maturity in a way when, I mean, we saw the postures, we know it. I mean, I feel that, 10, 12 years ago, we still needed to show them, because still people had a perception of yoga maybe was something boring, was something, not really, nothing like that, was something new. But now, I mean, we saw it, I feel we almost have to do the opposite, to say, okay, look, there's that, you saw it, but there's also another part.
Alessandro, can I just disrupt you to say that when you were first doing the photos, that was really frowned upon in Mysore, right? As you probably know, that we weren't meant to take photographs of ourselves. Sharat specifically said, do not take photographs and post them on social media, right? So you were doing something that was already a little bit controversial, I think, in those days, which you must have felt. I mean, I'm sure some teachers did tell you that, right? So you were really the forerunner of putting the yoga photo out and making it okay, because of course when other teachers saw that they were getting acclaim from the photos, they were also happy to jump on that, as I was myself. But yeah, I mean, it was a hidden thing because Sharat said do not post those photos and keep it private, so yeah.
That it was not really people didn't really listen to the advice, probably. I think they posted a lot. People posted a lot, and the more they were posting, the more successful we were getting.
Of course, but I mean, like, if we think about someone like Mark Roberts, who was very early on Facebook posting postures and posting his opinions and thoughts, he was criticized a lot for it.
Yeah,
if you remember, he was criticized, and most of us. I mean, I have to say, I wasn't on social media for that reason. I didn't come on until 2018 because I was very much in the Mysore thing. And I knew that if I did come on and start posting my thoughts, I would lose a lot of friends. I would lose a lot of my peers in Mysore because that still wasn't perceived as the thing to do. And to degrees, it still isn't. I mean, I have lost a lot of those people in Mysore that were friends. And I have been criticized a lot by my peers in Mysore because I'm giving my thoughts freely. Yeah,
I can imagine. So how can you sum it up with your thoughts? I mean, to someone doesn't know you, whatever, like you at the moment as an Ashtanga practitioner and teacher, what's your thoughts?
Really, I mean, we try to live in a meaningful way and connect to other people's in a way that's rich and meaningful and and full and direct. And deeply experiencing life. I mean, that's all we can know this life. So to that end, I try and do that in my teaching. I try and do that in my practice. And in terms of the Ashtanga methodology, I try and make it work for people so we can do that in the practice. And we don't just do something because we feel like this is the thing that's going to give me some mystical experience of enlightenment or something. I try and make it practical, I try and, because that never happened to me. And I think in the early days, I definitely expected that this yoga would do something like that, and it would make me live in a pain-free way where I wouldn't suffer anymore and everything would be perfect. And of course, the longer I go on, and I'm kind of getting towards 50 now, that seems unlikely. So one tends to be more pragmatic about things as one gets older. So similarly, I kind of try and make people's understanding of their practice not only theirs, but also perhaps more pragmatic, perhaps more realistic, in a way that is actually directly experiencing. Because I think for many years I felt like, well, the practice would make sense when I got to this series, or I'd understand everything when I got here, right? Like I'd be happy when I got here, or I'd understand the reason why I was sweating so hard and doing so much and causing myself pain once I got here. But of course, once I got there, never happened. And once I got past the advanced A series in Mysore, which was hard, it's not just like doing it with a teacher at home. I mean, Sharat is very exacting, as you all know. I mean, the standards there are high. And once I got past that, and I kind of realized that there was never ever going to be a place when it made sense to me to do that extreme practice, or where it really clicked and I became suddenly enlightened or something. And I didn't feel that was going to happen either, and it hasn't. So then I started having a bit of a think about what my aims were for practice and what my aims were as a teacher for helping others with it as well.
As a teacher, so what do you think is your role? I mean, is your role as a teacher? Because I guess people are coming from different reasons, right? There are different people coming from different reasons. Everybody's in their own journey. It's interesting,
And a
that.
multitude of reasons. I think each person comes with many different motivations, right? Like
Yeah,
from
as
the most
well.
superficial motivations to have a nice barman yoga pants for to the highest wish to understand the meaning of life in the face of a great deal of suffering that we all see around us, right? So and those meanings, those reasons can exist simultaneously. They're not mutually exclusive. I think we have all the reasons inside us when we approach yoga, as we approach many other things. So holding those reasons inside us, and all people do, all I can do is really give them the space to let the things percolate and to let these things sort themselves out. And so, really, I'm a very ambivalent, let's say, somewhat reluctant teacher because I cannot do anything for anyone else. All I can do is hold the space, support them, make them feel safe, make them feel encouraged. And then, little tips here and there, really, in terms of the technique to make sure that they want to carry on doing it, because the first thing to put anyone off is to practice badly and then get in pain because you're not moving the body effectively, right? So we want to make sure the person's moving the body as effectively as they can, but after that, really, it's about just giving space, just trying to hold a space for people. And it's easier, it's more difficult than it might sound, in the light of recent scandals, and so many scandals in the Ashtanga world, just holding a safe space and just not getting in anyone's way, it doesn't seem to be that easy for Ashtanga teachers. you know,
Why do you think there are so many scandals?
because it's in the matrix of Ashtanga. Because the matrix of Ashtanga, as you said earlier, is about the series and about making progress in the series, and so that then means that teachers end up policing people's progress in a series, which I see as ridiculous, because I think that ultimately we should be able to decide when we're ready to do something in terms of the amount of energy we have and the amount of comfort that we experience in the posture. If it's hurting or if we're really tired, then of course then maybe it's time to stop. And then we can decide when we want to try a new thing. I mean, I think it should be up to the individual really to take care of their progress to many degrees, right? I mean, it's another conversation slightly, but
No, no, no. It's very interesting, but brings me to another question. That is, I totally agree on what you're saying. But I mean, my question is, how can you still call it Ashtanga if, I mean, if you can, let's say, I understood, modify the postures, because I mean, it's not that necessary. You need to do it that certain way. It's not that necessary. Everyone has to progress through all the series or having this as a goal. Maybe switching things and there. What I'm saying is that, as we know, there are many. Ashtanga was let's say, the foundation for many other than styles of yoga. Vinyasa kind of inspires style of yoga, when basically they just, some of them more directly, some of them changing it more. They just took the postures, the poses, mixed it a little bit. Rocket, very similar. Jivamukti, they took a lot of stuff. A lot of Vinyasa teachers, Power Yoga, quite similar. Baron Baptiste, whatever, all these people, quite similar. So I mean, when you're not, teaching, exactly. I don't say it in a bad way, but whatever, exactly as it was taught in Mysore, but it was quite precise. If you don't do this posture, myself as a teacher, I don't move you to the next one, and stuff like that. How can you still call it Ashtanga? What is the thing that?
But I think that view of Ashtanga for me is a bad.
What is Ashtanga for you?
A bad representation of Ashtanga, which is just about power and control of the student. And I don't really feel that's doing justice to the series, justice to the method. Because if you look back at the early teachers when they went to Mysore, if they couldn't do something, they left it out. They did something else. I mean, look at the way Manju teaches, which essentially is similar to what his father taught him, obviously, right? And that was the experience that the early teachers I talked to on my podcast, they explained to me that they were encouraged to do more. If they couldn't do one, they modified it, they left it out. It was a joyous experience. It was a fun experience. It was experimental. It was catering for their own bodies and individual capacities. And then gradually it became more and more rigid. And a lot of that was just due to logistics. There were too many people. You couldn't experience an individually based practice anymore. So rules had to get tighter. But that wasn't the original way it was taken. I mean, what the Ashtanga thing is at heart is a way to self-practice and be taught in a self-practice capacity. And to do that, you have to have series, because I try to teach self-practice without any series to people, and it's chaos, right? People come in one day, they do one thing, they do next thing, they don't really know what they're doing. I can't know where they're
Correct.
going, what their next posture is. We can never build up a repartee. So what I find is the beauty of Ashtanga, and why I keep practicing and teaching it, is because it's a set sequence that allows self-practice, and you have to self-practice to do any form of hatha yoga, which is basically what it is, and be assisted with your practice in hatha yoga. Then you have to do a set sequence, but the sequence is the least interesting part of it for me, really. It's just a way to be able to logistically to be able to manage a room full of people doing self-practice, which also comes down the commercial basis of the fact that if we need a set sequence, because we need a number of people in the class, because we cannot teach one-to-one, because we cannot make a living as a teacher
Correct,
teaching
yeah.
one-to-one. So there's many things that tie into this, right?
So apparently teaching this way is more traditional than the people who claim to be traditional.
Right. Okay. So when we come back to that, yes, the actual traditional way of teaching it is a much more laissez-faire, let's say, much more relaxed, much more catering to the individual, and allowing people to do. I mean, if someone's stuck in Kapotasana for 20 years, that doesn't mean they can't stick their leg behind their head, for example. There's no. I think there's a myth here. There's a myth that one posture leads to the next, and it's not true. It's simply not true, right? The fact you can't do Marichasana D because you've got bad knees does not preclude the fact that you can do a back bend or pinch a Mayurasana or an arm balance. They're not related. It's utter stupidity. Well, it's not stupidity. I tell you what it is. It's the wish for a teacher to control the narrative of a student. And this is why I get hot under the collar about these things, because it ends up being about control. And this is what I say about scandals, coming back to that question, is because if you've got this low level abuse in the classroom all the time, which is about the controlling the narrative of the way that people experience their own bodies, then it's much easier to sneak in further manipulations under this same auspice, right? Because you're already controlling people. So their further manipulation and further abuse can easily come into the equation, because there's already this fact that you're controlling. No, you stop here.
Sure.
No, I don't want to stop here. No, you've got to stop here because I'm the teacher, right? So there's already this kind of dynamic of power and abuse of power in my mind. So therefore, further abuse of power is, let's say, not a fait accompli in Ashtanga. It's not inevitable, but it's easy to get into because the teacher is already overly controlling, right?
Yeah, and sadly, it might happen certain dynamics where also the student is already in a kind of mindset when want to be controlled in a way.
Right.
So,
well, you do point out an unfortunate capacity of human nature as well, that there are many people who, and understandably so, that you just want to know what to do. You don't want to take responsibility for yourself. You have a hectic life where you have to make choices. And at one time, the teacher could tell you, this is the way you do it. And you stop if you can't do it that way. And, and in some degrees, I totally understand it. It makes sense to the mind. You don't have to think. The teacher will tell you what to do. But I think in the long term, that way of doing it is quite concerning in terms of how one appreciates one's yoga.
No, absolutely. It can work on the long term. My take on this is that could be quite good for, practicing in such a strict way or whatever could be quite good. For example, if you need to recover like from an addiction or stuff like that,
right.
So of course you need some certain type of discipline that tell you exactly what you have to do, but you have to do it every day at the same time and with a certain intensity, whatever, because otherwise, you just fall in the same old habits. And that's why probably work also attracted and work with many people with former like addictions.
Absolutely. But also, of course, they end up, to argue the counterpoint to that, they end up breaking themselves to do those things, right? Because they're practicing so forcefully and being told that is the shape you must make, right? And if you cannot get that leg there, then you cannot continue further, and
correct.
And that's, and that ends up, in my experience, just injuring so many people, this mentality of doing it unnecessarily. And of course, if you injure a part of your body, you often never really regain full mobility or full capacity with that particular joint again. So it's serious stuff that's happening in yoga right now. And yoga is, I think it's like up there as one of the highest modalities for injury. So many people are getting injured in yoga, and it's kind of like ironic, right, that it's meant to be this healing holistic discipline, and actually it's probably injuring more people than like American football or boxing or something, kind of like, honestly, right? The amount of, I've seen a couple of rough averages of A&E admittance for yoga injuries. They are ridiculously high.
It's crazy how you also told me now you're going to the gym lifting weights. Maybe we can we talk a little bit about this, because it's something that when I used to do Ashtanga I was avoiding, and
And you were
I
told not
had
to do it. We were
for
all
my
told
yeah
not to do it.
exactly, because in a way, you know, also felt when I shared this publicly, you know, it was very divisive, I think, because some people are saying, why you do that? You know, you don't need to. It's not needed. And then, but the point is always, it's always confusing, because some people say, because yoga is not about how the body works or whatever. It's more about the energy. Yeah, but still, could be. I don't exclude the thing that the energy is also very important. But I mean, biomechanics and stuff like that.
I think the thing is that
Also,
the you know the stream of yoga asana, you know, if we look at it, it comes strongly from the stream of penance, from asana as a penance, right? So from the ascetic use of asana, which is probably the strongest or like most prevalent use of asana traditionally, if we look at, say, the roots of yoga by Mark and Jim
yeah,
Mallinson, right? Yeah. And they articulate the similar thing, that asana comes from the shamanic practices, which were using yoga ascetically as a way to mortify the body, right? As a way to cause so this idea of the, you know, doesn't matter if it breaks you, doesn't matter about your body, doesn't matter, you know, how you feel or whether your body works or not in daily life, as long as you can do the asanas, it kind of comes over. It kind of very much seeps into the narrative of, at least I think it did in the narrative of Ashtanga Yoga, right? That having a body that works or that feels good or that feels that is
yeah.
fit and strong is a bad thing, because it shows attachment to the body. And well, I think it's a crazy situation that it became this way. But I definitely think that ascetic root of the, you know, the asana, that, you know, well, it doesn't matter if it breaks you. In fact, let it break you, because this is not about the body. But I think, well, if we're embodied human beings in this world, then it is about our body. You know, we're not ascetics living in a cave trying to meditate ourselves into oblivion, that we are using this, and we have to admit that we're using this to feel good in life and to live a full life without pain. And well, I think,
Yeah,
you know,
my
yeah.
point is that I get it, but I mean, on a way, the thing also at a certain point, I stopped doing Ashtanga. I mean, I quit for several reasons, because as I say, you know, it's not that I understood for my constitution, for example, that I'm Vata Pitta, so I already a lot of fire in my system. So adding more fire daily, all this sweat and stuff, it just, you know, fire on fire. So it becomes really, for example, I was extremely skinny. I was really like not. It was probably not the more. I mean, yeah, it could have been done like in a slower way. Probably, you know, it shouldn't be adapted. But I mean, done usually is done. It was not probably the more, you know, the ideal thing for my type constitution.
No,
Let's
I
say.
do remember you practicing. You were definitely intense.
Yeah, intense. Yeah. But it's hard if you are like that. It's hard to say. Okay, you slow it down, you know, and not bad. Whatever. But what I'm saying is that I also follow some teachers who are now, you know, they're also saying, you know, we're going to the gym, and you know, there's one particularly, you know, but he was sharing his practice when he's doing probably third or fourth series, and then he's lifting weights, and then he's doing also some preparations both for the weights and for the yoga. I say, oh, yeah, okay, but I mean, how can you do something that, you know, it's not that everybody is 5 hours a day or 6 hours a day. I mean, professional athletes can, is what they do, is their job. But also that is a little bit, even if you're a teacher, you say, okay, you're a teacher, you train 6 hours a day. Yeah, not really, because I mean, if you're a teacher, you need to have energy to teach. It's about more giving than
True.
doing. I mean,
And
it's
then
good
coming
that
back to our original point
you
of
know, to our original point. It's not that
that
Carlo
that
Ancelotti, before training Real and now
best
Brazil, was
he
playing
was
like a
the
full
best
match.
practitioners. Yeah.
You know, not even was the best practitioner, but not even was playing right now at 60 something years old, like a full match. Can even do it with his belly. And, I mean, and it's fine, you know, great coach. So the thing is, how can you do all this? You know, what do you think is advisable? You know, if you, let's say, what I feel, for example, going to the gym, I feel that I can work specifically on certain parts of my body, need to be addressed. For example, basically saying, when someone is telling me, look, I only do asana, I'm very strong. I would like to say, okay, let's go to this bar, let's do some pull-ups. And I'm sure they can't do many pull-ups because there's no pulling movements in the practice.
True. I mean, it's all front body. It's all the front.
Exactly. So you say, I'm sure if you do a push-up challenge, okay, you're holding well.
They might be able to do some push-ups, but lacking any back strength, which is unfortunate.
But it's important. I mean, if you pull, you need to push.
The argument will always be, and I get it on social media. I mean, so one criticism is, well, why do we need to be strong? And it's like, it's not about building strength in the gym. And I say, well, no, you don't need to be strong. Of course, you don't need to be strong. You need, as long as you can put your suitcase on the on the conveyor belt, whatever, in the airport, carry your shopping bag. So you've got enough strength. In daily life, we don't need that much strength. But if you're doing these practices in Ashtanga Yoga, then they demand a lot of strength, and they don't give it. That's the point. They demand what they don't give. It's not a fair practice because they're performative. That's what I always say to people. These are performance postures. They're the performance, not the training. They're the performance, not the training. So you need to train to do if you want to do those postures regularly, because they're too difficult to do them without strength. Right?
So you think you need to train. If you want to do first series, the safer way is to also
need to do some strength training.
So it will be more time. It will be more time in the training, whatever. But I mean, it's what it is.
I don't think you need to do. I mean, that's another point, isn't it? When you're mentioning the repetition of the Ashtanga and doing it every day the same thing, and where you go down the gym, of course, you wouldn't train the same parts of the body every day. That's ridiculous.
Correct.
Because you need to give the body rest. So I would also say that. So yes, I mean, when you mention about how I've changed, I say like that. In terms of the way I relate to the physical body, completely differently, because I've seen how I have seen what happens, and I've seen how it goes with myself, with so many other people, right? You need to take some days of rest on certain body parts. You don't want to do the same thing every day. You want to do a range of things. You want to strengthen as much as you want to do flexibility work. You want to strengthen more than flexibility. So there's so many things that I would say make one take a modified view of yoga and of Ashtanga Yoga. I still love the system. I still teach it, but I look at it as energy work, and I don't look at it as a way of getting my workout anymore. Whereas I used to look at everything as one. Like you can do the spiritual stuff and the physical stuff as one package. Whereas now I say, well, look, this is, for me, the Ashtanga Yoga, it comes back to Hatha Yoga, and Hatha Yoga comes back to a tantric practice of working with the central channel, of working with the energy in the center. So it does do something different. And I think it did something different to you and me and all the people that did it, because it changes your mindset, because it's doing something to your spine, right? You're doing all these movements that affect your spine. And in the gym, you don't, you're doing individualized movements. They don't use your spine. And so it is specific. The yoga is specific, and that's why it's not a physical modality. But I keep it as energetic now, and I do the physical stuff elsewhere because I like it, and because I think
so. It's more a somatic practice, what you're saying, more than
not exactly somatic, because I'm not trying to feel my body exactly or get into my body. What I'm saying is that the Hatha Yoga has its roots in the work of Sushumna Nadi, of getting into the central
energy.
Yeah, and on a practical level, I can say that the nerves of the spine affect the body, and the nerves of the spine affect the mind. And if you stimulate these nerves of the spine, to cut a long story short, because there's more to it than that, if you stimulate the nerves of the spine regularly, they involve a clarification of the mindset. They do clarify the mindset. So it is a practice which does something to the head, and that's why it's there in the yoga tradition as something which, otherwise, we could say, well, why do yoga, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you would like, I mean, if you if you needed to sell it,
what have these asanas got anything to do with yoga philosophy? It's like, well, no, they haven't got anything to do with meditation philosophy, like classical yoga. But yes, they do have something to do with tantric yoga, which is the yoga of using the body energetically, and that yoga is based on the nadis, right? The idea of the central nadi of the spine, and how we can stimulate that to affect changes in the consciousness. And I do believe that. I do believe that happened on my own account, and I do believe that happens on individuals' account. Because when you first come to yoga, right, you leave yoga for the first time. If you can remember your first yoga class, you've done loads of other physical stuff before, but you feel different in yoga, right? You feel like, wow, and that's why we went to Mysore. That's why we got so into it, because well, I feel lighter, I feel clearer in my mind, I feel less reactive, I feel just different. And when I'd come to yoga after doing martial arts all my life, football, weight training, running. I'd done all the things. When I come to yoga, my first yoga class, I felt like, wow, this really, really helps my mind. And I didn't know why. And then look at the tantric text, look at what they're describing with a pragmatic eye, like not looking literally at the way that they're talking about the craziness that goes on in tantra and the prana and but looking more pragmatically. They're all saying there's something to do with the spine and stimulating the energy of the spine that changes the mindset. And so that's where I come down to. And this is the base of the way I teach. Yeah.
Wow, beautiful. Love it. I love it. Thank you. Yeah, we haven't even talked about your hip replacement.
Oh yeah.
How are you now? I saw you doing lotus.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at you mentioned a few questions before, and I looked at that question, and my honest answer to the question of the hip replacement is your level before the hip replacement, it will be the same level as you have after it, or better, because
Wow.
the range of movement that you had when if you have a bad hip and then you get it replaced is actually increased afterwards because you're no longer in pain and have the
Yeah.
restrictions of the muscles trying to hold the hip in place. So honestly, I'm not that I advise just having it without thinking, but everyone that I know, I'd say that, it's a very good surgery these days. And my level before the replacement was the same as my level now. That's not to say I'm doing the advanced postures anymore, but I haven't been doing them for years anyway.
Yeah.
But, for the
You don't
primary,
care.
the intermediate series, for the lotus, I don't really do
Yeah.
much leg behind the head, but I think I could if I wanted to. I mean, honestly, Alessandro, before we came on, I was running. I can run 20 minutes, and it's only 5 months on the hip.
Amazing.
And yeah, a couple of miles, just 10 minutes, 2 miles. So, at a reasonable pace. So this is crazy. So, I want to say that, yeah, I had pain for
Beautiful.
a number of years and now I don't. And yeah, I do think that as much as I am reluctant to ever give advice, it worked out for me, and I know that for many other people it has as well. But of course, there's this thing in the yoga world of not sharing your difficulties because it might seem that you are then a good teacher, right? So I did struggle with
I
this.
really love that you share that openly. I
Yeah,
really love
because of
it.
course, people think, well, he injured himself, so he can't be a
Yeah.
good teacher. This is the kind of
But
idea that I.
even if, what I'm not even asking, and it's not the point. I mean, even if it was not because of yoga, if it was because of yoga, but honestly, I don't care. Because even if someone is, whatever, was injuring himself doing yoga, it doesn't mean that he doesn't know how to teach it, whatever.
Well, yeah,
There
there's
can
that,
go
there's that. Yeah,
a lot of reasons why he did it, he
yeah.
pushed himself.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
you
yeah. That's
can,
a very
you
yeah.
maybe you might want to push yourself to certain limits that you know they're dangerous, and then being, like, being very respectful of the limits of your students and being very
Well,
compassionate with them.
yeah, because you don't have the compassion for yourself. Actually, yeah, they're very, very true.
I'm
But
following some people in bodybuilding. They're talking openly about steroids. They're taking steroids, and they're saying, I'm doing that, but I don't recommend it to anyone unless they want to compete and reach certain levels. Because say, if you take steroids to go to the beach and show the abs, you're
yeah,
stupid because
yeah,
you're risking your life.
yeah,
And they say, in my case, I know I'm risking my life. I know I can die for several reasons, but I want so badly to become, like the top,
yeah,
in this game. But
yeah,
I can risk my life for it. And if I die, I die happy.
yeah, yeah.
And you can say stupid. Yes, I'm saying it's stupid, but whatever. It makes sense. It doesn't make that, if I coach someone, they necessarily, bad trainers or bad coaches. They just know what they're doing, to themselves. Also the risks, and
Mm.
also that, I feel that. I mean, if you're doing third series, fourth series every day, whatever, yeah, you can do it. But I mean, saying that this stuff is safe, is okay, it's even accessible, it's something. Oh, you just have to practice and whatever. Like, come on, it's not. It's just it's good to be open. It's just something really pushing your body to the limits. But it's
Yeah,
totally fine if you decide to do it.
yeah. I think for most people, it's probably not safe. It's certainly not accessible for most people's bodies. I mean, for me, to be fair, I've done a lot on the hip replacement on social media, and what it is, I mean, many, it's latch and key. As all injuries are, if you have a genetic weakness,
Yeah,
which I
yeah, yeah.
did,
Sure, sure,
yeah,
sure.
just a one hip, in fact. The surgeon said I could have had this done when I was in my 20s because the one hip is misshapen, and the other hip is fine. So and then yes, the yoga did it. So you could say, well, no, the yoga didn't do it as much as it didn't give me the hip that it gave me in the first place. I was born with it, but yes, then the yoga and the rotations of the hip, they did do it. They did do it. So yes and no, yes and no.
Yeah,
It's
but
always
many other things could have done it because maybe if you
maybe,
were a runner, maybe you also could
maybe,
have done the same
possibly,
damage. The only way would have been probably to train the muscles around that in a
yes,
very
yeah,
safe way.
would
But
have
especially when you're
stabilized.
younger,
Yeah,
do you train in a very safe way? You want to have fun, no? So,
I,
you
I
know.
know. I mean, we got to the
So
bit the rotations in the yoga, the kind of
yeah,
mobility that is asking, particularly around the hips, is
sure,
is
sure.
extreme. It's extreme, and if you've got the propensity for a weak hip, let's say a shallow hip joint, right? It's the shallow, generally the shallow. It's called dysplasia of the hip joint. Yeah, is if you've got this propensity for like a bad hip joint, then those rotations will probably do it. And ironically, what it is that the shallow hip joint in the first place, it allows for the rotation, it allows for
Hmm.
the openness. So you see the people that are attracted to yoga that have got the kind of hip joint that does this movement have exactly got the weak hip joint in the first place that will cause the difficulty later on down the line, if you see what I'm saying. Yeah? So the fact that I
Wow.
could easily stick my leg behind the head was the problem in the first place. In a sense, it showed the hip joint wasn't built very well, and then in the end, of course, it's weak in that, it's weak and it goes.
Also, this means that a lot of hyper flexibility might be related to something that, I mean,
Yeah, and hyperflexibility is essentially weakness. It's a weakness in the body, right?
weakness.
The body is essentially hyper too flexible, right? It's too flexible for its own good. So those people that have the hyper flexibility, they trade on it, as it were. But as you say, you kind of raise an interesting point. To what end, right? Are we trying to be the best at our game?
That's the
And
point. This
and
is this
what's the
is
pay?
this is
And
my
what's the
question.
payback? It's not like we're getting thousands or millions of pounds for competing in the yoga Olympics. I mean, I often wonder, like, what it's not really a fair payback, right? You're doing these postures and you're potentially putting your body at risk. But one might question why one needs to practice
Why
in such
exactly?
such
Why?
in such an
Why? Because I mean, if you ask me
extreme manner.
about, let's say, I also I met a lot of dancers, for example. We're doing like crazy training. They train like 6 hours a day, and maybe they do the show in the evening. Crazy. For years they're doing like that, almost every day. So it's crazy. For their body. It's really. But why do they do it? They go on the stage. People, people clap their hands. They see them. They need this type of also of aestheticism and perfection, like to express what the show was meant to express. Because I mean, if you do the Swan Lake, it has to be done in a certain way. It's not that you can do it your way because you're not able to do it. So I get it in a way. If a football player or a boxer or whatever, they train all these hours. They also football players when they are in their 60s. Their bodies just they can even walk, most of them. Like
Similar,
properly.
we have to say similarly in the yoga
But they
sphere
did
as
it, yeah.
well.
But look, but the football player, they did it for the fame, for the glory, for the
Yeah, they got
money,
more payback.
for
Let's
the
say, yeah,
money.
yeah, yeah, yeah. At
Let's
least they're
say
millionaires.
they
Yeah,
started
there's
they started enjoying because they enjoyed playing soccer. Okay,
yeah.
they started like that, most probably. They didn't
The modern
start it for
yoga
the
teacher
money.
is penniless and needs a hip replacement. It's not a great
No,
trade-off.
this is saying say so it's for alignment. But no, because you're saying that you don't get enlightened by doing the 6 series of Ashtanga Yoga. So
I often think there should be a more performative yoga because that would take a lot of things out of the equation. If there was a yoga performance, then it would give that outlet. And I make a serious point here. It would give an outlet for those teachers to perform their yoga, right? To make it, because there is an aesthetic component to it, and then they wouldn't do all the performances they're teaching. Because what I notice too much is that the demoing of the teacher ends up as the whole workshop, as the whole instruction, right? We're watching them demo, just do it like this. This is how it's meant to be done. And so if the outlet for the performative, that needs of the teacher was given elsewhere on the stage, then maybe we could have a good good fortune of having teachers that actually teach instead of performing, right? And that might,
That's
might sound
interesting.
that might sound cynical, but I think that really is one thing lacking for modern yoga. There is no performative outlet, and as I said before, there's the roots of modern yoga are, whether we like it or not, fairly based on yoga performance, right? On the demonstrations of Krishnamacharya and his young boys in the palace. But maybe going back to your thing, and I thought that some of your questions that you batted over to me earlier about the honesty of social media and talking about talking honestly and directly online and the battles that we have in social media, and also your honesty in the way that you post, which I really appreciate these days. I think that might be an interesting avenue to go down now because yeah, I mean, I think that as I said, I had a lot of fear in putting this out, my hip replacement. I felt like it might it might it might it might put say it might put a difficulty into my working. Let's put that
Yeah,
way. It might decrease my ability to work, and of course that's also my living. So on the very basic level, there was a worry, right?
absolutely.
And I think that worry is there for most teachers. That it's also the whole confusion of the yoga and what they care about, because we all care about it, is also, let's say, intermingled with the commercial interest of them needing to make a living. So I think the whole thing gets very tricky, right, on social media because people are making a living, but yet they're also care about their profession as well. And I think that's a battle I think that we see on social media, right? Of
But you see, you're quite successful. You travel, you do workshops. So I mean, you have your people, who like to your students, your followers. You're like people who appreciate that. So it's not really like Look, my feeling is that because I was feeling something similar when I started sharing things openly. Because okay, look, I'm working with many yoga teachers now. I'm losing all my clients, and but the thing is that. I started thinking, look, if someone is judging me for what I'm saying, and there are people who really judge me. There are some people who send me messages. We are sending to them, regarding me or stuff like that. I laugh honestly, and of course, even people who I did photos or video for them, they, of course, they will never hire me again. But I say, if someone is judging me for that, I don't want them as a client. But because I used to work in advertisement. I used to be quite successful in that. I was doing all commercial stuff and whatever, like for commercial clients and stuff like that. If I just wanted that, any client and success in that and whatever, I would stay there. If I moved out and I started doing yoga and I was more into this community, whatever, it was not like to reply in the same patterns. It was just saying, okay, I have to live in my own terms, to express myself in my own terms. I will call my people. My people will like it. But I can't build, my expression, my
yeah.
self-expression on other people's like and ideas and
I,
whatever.
I think for me it came down to just the simple matter of like, it's just more interesting to be
Yeah,
honest and
yeah.
putting that out there
Also,
and the kind of interactions that I had around this public going through the hip replacement in the public eye, let's say, was so much more interesting than trying to hide it away. And also, I mean, at the end of the day, we've also got to say if we are in any way affiliated to yoga or any kind of wish to see clear in life, then we've got to also attempt to live as honestly and with as much integrity and authenticity as we can. And if I'm teaching yoga, and I've committed my whole life to teaching yoga, then like if I'm not trying to be authentic and honest, then one's got to ask some serious existential questions about what I'm doing, right? So there was an obligation also to be honest, and then there's the human interest factor. Like if I put it out there, it's honest, it's raw, it's direct, and what's going to come back? Like what kind of conversations are we going to open up now? Because we're all in charge of where this yoga goes, right? There's no directive that says this modern yoga, which is not the same by the way as yoga
no.
pre 20th century, this modern yoga, it's up to us where it goes, and whether it goes in a better or worse direction is up to our integrity and honesty around how we use it. And so these kind of conversations and opening up these kind of things is really like where I'm at with the social media, right?
I think so, because I mean, the thing that I personally don't want to go is like, preserving the dogmas and just defending the dogmas, defending like something that, every time that someone is saying the word tradition, I think, I personally think about pizza or pasta, because I think, look at that, when you think about, I'm Italian, so you say pizza or pasta, they use tomato. Tomato comes from South America.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was a South American thing until the 16th century. So, well, and imagine the pizza margherita, like the one with the mozzarella,
Yes,
that
yes,
one.
yes. Yeah.
Okay, that one was invented by a chef in Naples in 1861, because the queen of Italy was coming to Naples and her name was Margherita. So he made a pizza in honor of the queen with the colors of the Italian flag. So for the first time, he put cheese in the pizza.
Oh,
So
before that was no cheese, was there?
yeah, it was only tomato. I
Oh,
mean,
really?
before it was only bread and
Right.
oil.
Well, I mean, yeah, we don't even want to talk
Imagine
about
bread. It was
and then it was
bread.
from
Pizza
China.
was bread and oil, and the anchovies as well, sardines,
Anchovies,
whatever.
right?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
this was until the 16th century. Then tomato came, so it was anchovies and tomato, and olives maybe. Some people were putting olives, whatever, and some oil. And then there was this guy, this guy put the I don't remember the name, whatever, put the mozzarella and invented basically the pizza, what is nowadays called pizza, because you don't think of some bread with tomato if you think about pizza. So imagine at the end it is not even 200 years old, 150. And that's the tradition. Imagine how it changed, if you say. So, I mean, yoga, of course, if you look back at the Vedas, or if you look back at Hatha Yoga Pradipika, at Patanjali, whatever, was very different. But people are saying, they just refer to that, but also there are different traditions, because one thing is Patanjali, one thing is the Bhagavad Gita, one thing, there are so many different traditions.
Yeah,
like,
well, I mean,
coming
that
together, no?
we say begs the question when you talk about tradition. It's like, well, which tradition are you talking
Exactly.
about?
Also, that which tradition?
And then there's the modern tradition, which is also a hybridization of Western and traditional Indian influences. Again, so there's a lot of different traditions out there. So just
So that's why I feel that being honest at least means that we are sharing the thing we are doing, we are sharing the thing we're thinking, and so in a way, it's it's more aligned. Because if you're sharing something that is not what you think, what you do, what what you stand for, what are you sharing?
I think I often come down to this now more recently that you've got these two ideas of tradition, right? The emic tradition, the emic approach to tradition, which is to be immersed in tradition and to shut yourself off from
Yeah,
outside perspectives. This is to be inside the tradition, yeah. And the etic perspective to tradition, which is to look outside the tradition and understand where it comes from, understand other relationships around the tradition, how it came about, the context of the tradition, how it relates to other things. So this is the perspective I think that we're taking. But I do respect those people that do say, well, I'm within this and I'm not looking outside, and this is what they
yeah.
told, this is what they told me, and this is the tradition. And as we said before, for certain people, and for me for a short period of my life, it kind of made sense. It gives a purpose, it gives a clear sense of meaning, right? And does help with commitment. But I just think in the long term, for long-term practitioners and teachers, I just feel it's better to look with a slightly more wider critical perspective, let's say, out, because we cannot stay with this blinkered perspective towards yoga or Ashtanga as if it's 2,000 years old and comes from Patanjali and was written down in the Vedas, etc. It doesn't make sense, and it's not really helpful for the modern practitioner, because those aims are our aims. We aren't aiming to transcend the body. We aren't aiming
Exactly.
necessarily to stop the mind, to have no emotions.
What are you aiming to? What are you aiming
That's it.
to?
I think that's the interesting. I think you put your finger on it. That's the interesting question: is what are our aims? What are our aims? And perhaps we don't know. And perhaps that we need the space of the yoga class, the space of again, the space of a self-practice yoga class, particularly, to just to sit with ourselves and to go into the space of not knowing. And perhaps we don't need to know, but just that self-connection outside the need to know, perhaps outside the need to know, is profound. And that's where I come to, really. Like,
Beautiful.
we don't need conclusions. We don't need to know. We just need to sit with the questions and make a meaningful life relating to those questions.
Wow, I love it. I love it. Yeah, yeah. It's the perfect ending for me of our conversation. I really love it, and it's the same thing, you know, same conclusion at the end. I have, you know, we have to stop asking ourselves the question, you know, where are we going? We don't know. We
Yeah.
have not. We don't know where we're coming from. We don't know. We
Yes,
don't know. We
and
can't. You know.
not needing an answer for that either, and not needing the teacher to be the oracle of knowing exactly what your
Yeah.
practice means or what it should mean for you, and not needing yourself to know exactly what it means or should mean. But it's much more interesting if we open up the dialogue to have more perspectives and to allow questions to come in and to be able to
Yes.
to be able to tolerate uncertainty. I think the mature practitioner, when we talk about an advanced practitioner or a mature practitioner, is the one who can tolerate uncertainty and carry on anyway. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it, Adam. I'm really happy you joined this
Thanks for the chat.
conversation.
It's been lovely to see you again, and
Yeah,
continue your great
really.
work on social media. You know, I'm enjoying, as you say,
And you
you've enjoyed
too.
my content. I've certainly enjoyed you putting the cat amongst the pigeons as well. So keep up with that.
Thank you so much, Adam. Ciao.
Cheers.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys. Yeah, I hope you like it. Let us know.